Hello, and welcome to another wonderful episode of Submitted for Your Approval, the weekly card review show for Collective, the community-created card game, where you make the cards. I am joined today, as always, by my co-host, Grief.
Howdy, folks.
And
Happy St. Nicholas or whatever.
And we have also Empty Folder coming back at us from his home pad.
Hello, everyone.
Back home for the holidays.
Yep.
This is my house. I never go anywhere. Anyways, let's get started with Haunted Yarn. Haunted Yarn is a 2-drop neutral cursed curio from N3ON. That's a mouthful. With put 2 random 1-cost units from graveyard into play. The reason I wanted to highlight this card is actually interesting. Apra is a programmer like myself, and he came up with this really fun thing. It's the Discord Face Bidder bot. It's still in alpha. We're working on some tweaks before we launch it onto a server with more mainstream knowledge. But it's a random card prompts generator. And so it's kind of like it's supposed to be a creativity tool to help people come up with ideas for cards. And of course, it's named after the legendary Face Bidder from that community member who made one card and then dipped. And it never got in. So this card's prompt was that it had to synergize with cats. And so the most common cats we had were the musicians. The common thing they had was the random 1 cost. And it played naturally into like recursion. And N3ON was a good place for it because undead pets is kind of one of our things. So what did you think of this, Grief?
I like it. It's not too strong, not too weak. It's probably in a fine middle ground, unlike something like a certain place that revive 2-drop units and give them agile. It is technically a stronger version of the Return of the Recruits, because Return of the Recruits gave you up to 3 units, but they returned back to hand. And they were only related to one attack. This is just 1 cost. And depending on the kind of recursion engine you want to run, this could actually see pretty good amounts of play.
Yeah. One thing that apparently Apra was very sad when he realized is green men would be a good place for this. Because exactly. The green men are 1 cost. And so that causes kind of an issue. But hey, it's a thing. What do you think, Empty?
Yeah, I agree with Grief. I think this is fairly well balanced. I think it's going to see like immediate play when it gets in. Especially in the deck that I think it would be best in is Vampires, because they have a lot of 1-drops, and especially like good 1-drops. The one that comes to mind is the one that draws you a vampire and deals 2 damage to you. Mm-hmm. Like you can use this to get extra value and also extra sack targets to fuel all your vampires.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting that after rotation, it's going to kind of lose the context of this as a cats card because all the 1-drop musicians are going to go away. But maybe this will, we can have 1 cost matters cats in the future. It's hard to say.
New cycle of cats?
New cycle of cats?
Ooh.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. Okay, the Pyrockmancer was one of the winners from the Mind Arcanist Jam, and it appears this is not even Mind. Anyways, it says...
I think it was just Arcanist Jam, not Mind Arcanist Jam.
Oh. Anyways, it's a 4-drop neutral 3/4 human bard Arcanist from Concierto. Whenever another allied bard or Arcanist enters play, create a fireball. So this is our new fireball engine, and someone should bug report the rendering on this because that's a little wonky. Empty, what do you think of this?
It's all right. Like, obviously, it's going to be best in Mind or KM since the fireball you're going to be paying that off affinity penalty. But like, it is quite strong if this sticks around. Like, there's a lot of bards in the game, surprisingly. Arcanists, not so much, especially after rotation. But yeah, seems pretty good.
How much actually got in from the jam? Like 2-3 things, maybe? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Next question.
Grief. What do you, I'm a little worried about this because this reminds me of, well, I guess you do have to play a card. Or actually, you just have to enters play a card, so you can even do some like flicker shenanigans. I'm a little bit worried about like the amount of value this can generate. What do you think, Grief?
I mean, there does definitely go way more resources into this card compared to something like Pharaohs Matchstick,
Yeah.
which basically just discarded 3 cards and now banishes 3 cards to generate that the same amount of fireballs. Or was it 2 now? I forgot the nerf.
It's only it's only 2 when it replaces.
Yeah, and in that regard, yeah, sure. If you build a Bard Swarm or Arcanist Swarm deck, this can probably have a very good payoff, especially with Yamato Omomori or whatever it is called. Sure, that is a good game plan. But on the other hand, you still need to actually run a very high volume of Arcanists, which on the other hand, or Bards, which on the other hand, don't really synergize well with each other, but have more individual purposes that could technically work into an action spam-ish or unit-based action spam-ish deck. So it will find a place. How good that deck is at the end of the day, or as a action-based tribal deck, how good that will be, remains to be seen and to be tested.
Yeah, what we need is probably a couple Arcanists that either have entrance effects and you can maybe do some flicker-based stuff or something like that. Because my first thought was flicker, but unfortunately, I think Aesthetic only has like the 1 Arcanist in Neon Sinister Dove. And the rest of them are like Trickster or something. So my first thought for it doesn't really work out, but maybe it could find a home.
Yeah, so I looked it up. I thought we had way more bards. We don't. This is one of the 3 bards we have. And Arcanists look fairly slim too. Like there's a lot of Arcanists and other affinities.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so we'll see where it finds a home. Now, time to talk about one of my winning designs I made with my fiance. Scuttling Hermit Crab is a 1-drop strength 1/2 Hermit Crab from Osagarth with create a bigger shell in hand. And if you are spirit, so is this. What is a bigger shell? It is a 2-cost equipment with give a unit +1/+2. If it is a Hermit Crab, return this to hand at end of turn. And Hermit and Crab are tribes, by the way. So that's referring to the Hermit Crab box on the Hermit Crab. This is just made from a casual conversation about how cool Hermit Crabs are with my fiance, and it got into the game. Graves, what do you think of it?
You should definitely design more cards together with your fiance because they're actually balanced.
Oh, you're making me feel good and hurting my feelings at the same time.
See, that's part of the name. I have a 5-stage plan to get you through life. Call it the stages of grief.
So yeah, the idea with this was, okay, equipment procs for days. And I think, at least in the legacy pool where there's stuff to do with that, this should go off pretty well. This can go into strength and spirit equipment packages. So do you think this is a good card? You think this will see play?
It's definitely a good card. It's not a crap. So yeah.
No.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This will be an auto include in like every spirit and strength equipment deck while it's in standard.
Yeah, because it's a solid 1-drop, and I mean it's a balanced solid 1-drop. So
it will probably see play until it rotates out next year. So yeah, that's pretty much a pretty good solid staple unit that you just created there.
Oh. So yeah, look to this if you're building an equipment deck in either of the affinities. And a little Easter egg for you guys. Look at the flavor text for the Hermit Crab and then look at the flavor text for the bigger shell because they're deliberate mirrors of each other. Because it's always in search of a bigger shell and then waiting to be found by a Hermit Crab. So it's like plays the whole cyclic thing of like you keep replaying it and then the spiral on the shell. Now let's get into the bulk of the week, which is always going to be the
new designs on the subreddit.
The new designs on the subreddit, yep. And it appears my internet is not wanting to play nice with me.
You should probably feed a hamster.
There we go. Okay. Starved Pouncer is a 4-drop strength 4/3 wolf from Woolly Land with dual unit, then trigger the summon ability. So this is like the circuit champion thing, I think, that's already in the game, where it's like, I'm gonna keep killing things or hitting things until I die. And it does so by triggering the summon over and over again, and it fills in as a wolf. Wolves are, as far as I know, gone post-rotation. Correct me if I'm wrong. They were around like before I really showed up. So as far as tribal type relevance, I'm not sure. And as far as this being a different circuit champion, I'm not sure. But first of all, this is one of my favorite arts from Squawk. It's really, really simple, but I like the simple in it. And so I kind of wanted to talk about what is this card doing and what could this card be doing differently. So I'll let you start, Empty.
Yeah, so I mean, what this card is doing is basically it's just a removal spell.
Yeah.
And it's a unit. Like you said, wolves are super gone post-rotation. They were like a very efficient tribe because they had basically only 5 cards for the majority of their lifespan, but were still like workable. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have too much to say about it. I think it's just like a replacement for a stock pack Pouncer that like is a little bit more expensive for the trade-off of being able to take out multiple things.
Yeah.
It's great against Dunewalkers, so that's something.
Yeah. That's gonna take out 3. And honestly, it can be very efficient removal if your opponent has a couple places or wanted, because it doesn't need to get hit, unlike circuit champion or whatever. So
if there was a way to like lower the attack on your opponent's units reliably.
Yeah. What do you think of this, Grief?
This is a very good anti-ward tech, disregarding the fact that the game is pretty much an entirely anti-ward. Every time you level up on random, if you roll a critical 1 failure. But yeah, this will be, for the most part, a legacy support for wolves, probably replacing a third copy of Gone with the Wind in Legacy because that's the same cost and will help out your wolf amalgamation. Cause this thing can probably kill multiple units depending on the setup or buffs on the board, etc. pp. On the other hand, in rotation, this will be, as MT already mentioned, just technically be a hard removal, or what is hard removal against any kind of unit with 4 or less life. So probably more burn removal, similar to Electrocute or Old Electrocute. Does trigger kill effects though, cause it's still a unit.
Yeah, so I think this fills in the actual wolf side of this. Doesn't do much post rotation for the multiplayer community, but it is a good removal spell, and so we need some more removals coming in soon. And this might actually be a decent way to fill that role because it's pretty reasonable. It's not doing too well on the subreddit. It's at like a 3.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't really know. Okay, N3ON Jibber-Jacker is a 2-drop mine, 2/1 human trickster from Aesthetica with entrance, exhausted enemy unit. If it's already exhausted, silence it instead. So I really like the idea of entrance control, and I really, really love this art. For some reason, Cannibals has been sitting on this card for like months. It's had like 8 different names, and the effect's almost always been basically this. I don't know what took him so long, but I'm glad it's finally out. It's got about 10 on the sub. It could improve enough. This could get in reasonably. With kind of the numbers we've been seeing get in. What do we think of this? Grief, I'll let you go first.
I like to explore exhaust a little bit more, and having it on entrance is pretty damn effective, allowing you to also interact instantly with exhausted units that are played to silence them as a threat. Sure, is probably good, considering the fact that usually Mind doesn't have access to hard removal outside of bouncing, which is on the verge of being hard removal in our game, depending on how powerful it is. But yeah, I think it's a pretty solid design because this is soft disruption on a stick that could be repeatable and does synergize pretty well with it and fits a pretty good game plan and legacy, since most of the blink / flicker effects of the neon shell will rotate out.
Yeah, that is something to bear in mind post rotation, is they need a new Vanishing Act. I don't think Cupcake's
That's not
really...
Vanishing Act.
Well, yeah, that's not Vanishing Act. Hopefully it needs something, different and innovative. Empty, what do you think of this?
So I really like the design on this card. I just think that this version of it is absolutely insane. Like the fact that it's a 2-mana 2/1, so you're developing your board. This is only like slightly understated, and then you can just essentially remove whatever your opponent played. Like units and collective, they're almost never good if you take away the text. Most of them are terrible, and you can just disrupt whatever your opponent did for 2 mana, and you're not even losing tempo because you just developed a unit too. And the unit is threatening to do it again if you have any kind of bounce effect.
Yeah. Well, so my counter argument to this is if you look at like Mesmerize is 2 damage and Exhaust and a silence for 3. This is not a flat silence. You cannot silence whatever you want. It is limited in what it can target. You have to either hit something on the way in or you have to have a bounce or something ready. Or the other side of it.
If it costed more, that would be more of a downside. But at 2 mana, leaving 2 mana up to deal with anything your opponent plays, that's easy. Like any deck can do that almost.
I just think that if you look at kind of what Mesmerize is doing and kind of what Viper Strike is doing, one mode is maybe a little push, the silence mode, and the exhaust thing is definitely just nothing. But I
don't think you ever use the exhaust thing. Maybe very rarely.
If you're trying to develop like you said, develop a board and then get it on and then flicker it or whatever, I don't know. But yeah, I see what you're saying where it is a little pushed maybe, but I like it. Kasei Tricksune is a 9-drop mine 0/1 Demon Fox from Aesthetica. Ward, Agile, Ambush. Entrance, create a copy of a different unit. Merge this with it, it gains the Fox Tribe. So this is, this reminds me of like Delirium from Binding of Isaac, in that it keeps coming back as copies of stuff you've seen before, and it is very, very hard to get rid of. And I like it. So whatever it does is going to confer that Ward, Agile, and Ambush. This guy is scary. So you're going to have to deal with a copy of one of your units until you can get rid of all of their units, and then you can maybe finally finish this thing off. That's why it's costed at 9. This is a powerful, powerful card. I really, really like it. What do you guys think? I'll let Empty start.
I really, really like it too. So a lot of the initial merge designs we saw were like fairly basic, just like exploring that aspect of merge. And these are the type of designs that I was really looking forward to when I heard about the merge mechanic, because it's like this really interesting clone effect where it just comes back over and over again, and your opponent has to come up with some way to like deal with this or make sure that it's on a unit that they can just let live, basically, so that you're not cloning more stuff. I think it's a really cool card. I'm looking forward to it if it gets in the game.
Yeah. For a long time, by the way, what the problem was is actually merge was misblocked and could not be put on things that weren't summons. But we fixed that. It was one block off from a correct version, as it always is. Grief, what do you think of this?
This is interesting. I mean, sure, I like everything bad on a stick with less keywords, but it's a 9 cost. Sure, it's probably the correct way to do that, but to actually interact with bigger units to grant them the ability to have Agile, Ward, and Ambush, you have to get rid of the card that currently has a +0/+1 buff ward agile ambush unit, that is probably big enough to actually utilize it. But at the end of turn, you probably have already a unit that was able to act. You just gave it ward and +0/+1 for 9 mana.
Yeah.
So it will get better if the first target dies, but basically putting that on a 1-cost unit or a unit that you've played last turn is pretty inconsequential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does have the issue, I think maybe, that it's kind of a win more. That you already got to have a really big target out to get the most mileage out of this.
I mean,
Possibly.
You can hit your opponent's stuff.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that gives you a good comeback potential. I agree.
Oh, so the other thing with this is that if we actually like have reliable bounce effects post-rotation, if you bounce the unit this is attached to, that unit will come back, and then this will enter again, and you get another copy.
Yeah, so vanishing acting this is fun. So yeah, really great card, potential for a lot of fun shenanigans potentially. I'm excited for it, and it's actually doing pretty well. So it stands to get in, and yeah.
Oh, we gotta wait for it to load again.
Shackled within the shadows, they patiently await the return of their dark master.
By the way, one of my gripes with that card, it's a Tricksune. Why isn't it a Tricksune tribal?
Yeah.
Minute gripe.
Anyways, Soul Slime is a 2-drop spirit action from Mort Stahl, Realm of the Dead Things. With rebound and exhaust 2 units, this can only be played once per turn. So I understand that with the rebound, you could play this twice in the same turn, obviously. I don't know why that restriction's there.
Because of looping that effect.
Because I mean, it's like a slightly better Viper Strike for 2.
Do you know that this is exhaust 2 units, an effect that technically Mom was able to pull off?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For 2 mana.
Okay.
And any kind of action rebound, action recursion effect would allow you to, well, maybe for 7 mana, for 8 mana, lock down the entire board.
Well, yeah, but then you're spending 7 or 8 mana just to get one good attack in, is the whole point. Well, and you actually, it is also defensive that you shut down their attackers.
Yeah.
And so there's that. I just think it's a pretty steep investment, but it is a good card. I see why it's a good card. I see why it's doing 18 on the Reddit. So you guys are arguing that this is fair and balanced, and so okay, I see it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only once per turn is there mostly to keep this as a defensive card instead of an offensive one.
Yeah.
Since like if you play it 2 times in one turn, exhausting 4 units is usually like a lot of time just going to be your opponent's whole board.
Yeah.
And then you can just attack uninhibited. Yeah.
But even with 2, you can lock down their 2 biggest, depending on whatever mode you want to do with it. Do we think this is going to see play? Do we see a deck where this is going to be slotted into? Well, I would hope so. It's got 18 votes on the Reddit.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. This is, for most boards, almost the half an effect of a one-sided fog effect. Because as I said, this is 2 mana, 1/2 of Unveiled Waters lockdown effect.
Yeah.
On the other hand, sure, it has rebound. It interacts with any kind of discard outlet effect. So yeah, you discard, both players discard a card. With the last 1-drop that we got, you discard that card. It's pretty inconsequential for you. Your opponent is now -1. You don't. On top of that, There is actually an idea to design an exhaust matter stack with cards that gain benefits from being exhausted, which you should actually take notice of, because that card here can also exhaust your own units.
Yeah. Interesting. One thing that now that you mention it, they put the word soul in the name, and this could have just been a Spectre action. I don't see why not. MT, what do you think of this?
Well, I mean, I would like it if it was a Spectre action so I could play in my Spectre deck. That might be too much.
Yeah.
Honestly, I agree with Grief. I think this will maybe find a home in Spectres. Right now, that list is like pretty competitive for slots, but post-rotation, it loses a lot of cards.
Yeah.
So I think this will be easy to slot in.
It'll be a nice little hole filler. Stone Prosthetics is a 1-drop spirit equipment from Talira. So spirit equipment, awesome. Fully heal a unit and give it plus attack equal to the amount healed. Scour 2. So this is going to take your big blocking thingy that's been soaking up the damage or whatever, bring it back better than ever, and give it a nice attack boost to boot. Tell me about why you picked this card, Grief.
Put it on a duel list.
Mm-hmm.
Put it on any good fighter. Sometimes just target a unit out of shits and giggles to Scour 2.
Yeah, this is the whole this is like the solve the puzzle, or like certain cards have the whole puzzle of how to use them. This is the toddler's little square hole in a square peg, and like it's very, very easy to know why I want to use this card, right?
Exactly.
But I do think it's very interesting in some respects. It develops a specific identity for spirit equipment and talks about, well, HP matters specifically because it talks about healing. So it wants to be put on bigger units and maybe is given some love to DAT. I don't know what to make of that. Or
in all honesty, this is a very solid design by JTAD.
Yeah, I agree. It's very cute. I definitely like this. It's doing really well on the Reddit. So, what do you think of this, Empty?
I like the design too. We like hardly ever get heal cards, so I think this is a great way to have both a heal card that supports these sort of high HP units as well as fighting units, and then like the Scour 2 tacked on there is just like a bit of extra where like you can just play this if you're really looking for something maybe and try and find it.
Yeah, a little bit of
the only issue I see with the like the equipment deck post rotation is that they really need a way to get overrun, and this solidifies that even more because you're going to get these huge attack units after all this healing and not be able to get in with them.
And overrun is a neutral affinity keyword. It could go on any other. We could put a neutral equipment out with it. Somebody get on it.
First aid got changed. It's gained.
Oh yeah, it's plus 6 HP now.
So that just to explain the difference between heal and gain to people not really knowledgeable of it. Gaining HP, even for player characters, means that they will add towards their maximum base HP. That means a player who starts with 25 HP has a maximum base HP of 25. Whenever you as a player or a unit on your board gains HP, that maximum base HP is raised by that amount. Therefore, any kind of heal effect will heal the difference between the current negative HP pool and up to the maximum HP pool that a target currently has. So in regards to first aid, which increases the maximum HP total by 6, is pretty important because it will also allow you to play the Stone Prosthetics right afterwards because first aid has passed.
Yeah. So moving on to N3ON Ghost from the Mythgard squad. N3ON Ghost is a 5-drop mine 2/4 fancy hacker from Aesthetica. Unblockable. When this deals damage to a player, draw a card, and entrance deals 2 damage to the opponent. So this is a 5-drop Aesthetica card, and it can get you a lot of cards potentially because it's unblockable, because it's got the entrance effect, and it's got that beautiful art on it by Riss. I think this is very neat, and very stylish, and I think appropriately deserves the fancy moniker. What do you think of this card, Empty?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really solid design. Having this like sort of value over time card that's really low risk, because it just immediately damages your opponent a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Great way to like get in some chip damage and like sort of a mid-range deck and refuel.
Yeah. And it gives you that Ash Grady proc on the turn you need it, or on the later turns and stuff like that.
I don't know. At turn 5 as Ash Grady, you're not really looking for more proc.
Yeah. I don't know. I think they should have gone for the 3rd tribe, because I think a lot are people like humans in Lazaro. So putting 2 irrelevant tribes on this, I understand they wanted to keep fancy because it's their thing, but I'm a little sad that this ruins its own potential in what I thought would be a deck that would get a lot of use out of this, maybe. Grief, what do you think?
Their post submission cosmetic updates that you can actually do when that card gets in, so that's not too much of a problem. My current question is it understated or actually on curve? Because stat-wise, it is probably understated for the stat pool that it is actually meant to, because there have been actually now tables out for keywords and how much stat points they will take away from a unit, as well with the contention of what is the interaction with other effects. Could this need at least 1 or 2 more stats? I don't know. Maybe, especially as a 5-drop. But yeah, it's a fine design even without it.
Well, yeah, I say definitely the cantrip would bump it up 1. So it's already, that accounts for 1 of it. And so it's a 4-drop, 2/4 unblockable, which is, yeah, I can see why you're saying it's still maybe a little bit under, maybe could use a little bit of a push. I do think one of the things they were trying to keep going was the 2 in the damage is supposed to match the 2 on the attack.
Yeah.
And so I don't really know if they wanted to change that, but it is something to think about, where I do think this is maybe a little bit under.
Just slightly though.
Yeah, not even like it would keep me from running it under. It's just,
I mean, this will absolutely need a slower meta for it to see play.
Yeah. Okay, the Venerated Goblin is a 2-drop neutral 2/3 Goblin Priest from nowhere in particular. With when a unit dies, its controller must pay 1 mana if they can't banish it. This is a Metro-9 design. Haven't we talked about this before?
We did?
Yeah.
But anyways, so Grief, I bet you're sitting people down and being like, here's why we need to get on the train with this, or what do you?
I just want more hate bears, and this is actually solid hate bear effect, considering that, okay, now we are transitioning into rotation. This will put an initial dampening effect on any kind of graveyard shenanigans, and we can actually even put potentially, not technically stronger, but potentially better graveyard shenanigans into the game that aren't just self-recursion brute, self-recursion wigmore, etc. But technically this could allow us to do so. Also, we can now print reanimator effects with such a card in the game, because yeah, if I see that, or if I'm lettering, I can tag that for specific meta matchup. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a solid unit. Neutral, you can put it everywhere.
Yeah.
I'll vote that card. I think it's at 9 votes.
Yeah, and so I don't know why. I mean, this could possibly even give birth. We don't have a lot of hate bears. We can get some more hate bears, and maybe we can make like a tribal archetype going, because we got the Bird Brothers, and we can have tribal priest hate bears. Nobody? Okay, worth a shot.
No.
Do you have any notes before we move on?
Yeah, I think this is a really great design. I like that it techs against two different decks, which is self-sack and graveyard stuff in different situations. There's also like weird things where you can like do a grave rave or something and blank out your opponent's mana. And then of course, once they run out of mana, Grave Rave will just start banishing the units because they can't pay the costs anymore.
Yeah.
So like there's some really fun stuff you can do with this. I think it's a great design.
Yeah.
We need more banishing on tap.
Okay. So, those of you who don't really follow the Discord, Dia had a comic going, and this is actually a character from that comic.
It's a character from the comic.
It is a character from the comic.
No.
Menace, the Pharaohs Sickle, is a 7-drop spirit, 6/3 undead Lizabo from Mirage. Duelist, Lifebound, Summon, Great Beetle Ramses. And it has Endure 5 and Overrun while Ramses is in play. Ramses is a 5-drop, doesn't matter. 4/4 insect mount with Overrun, Endure 1, and when this attacks, Menace also attacks. Cool. People were going around launching comparisons to like Captain Dan. This is, so the Menace is really, really hard to kill, even really hard to do much about at all while the beetle is in play, unless you just, hard remove it. And then it's also going to duel and give you some life. This is really, really powerful. Is it too powerful? Grief, I'll let you talk first.
Funny enough, there are actually there were discussions about regarding Menace, and I just talked a bit about the other Ghost, N3ON Ghost, when it comes to calculating stat pools. Yeah, Menace is a peculiar case because if we go by our old standard, which we wanted to actually go away from, where units, where the unit stats are calculated by cost times 2 plus 2 is equal as basically the stat spread for attack and HP values, minus or plus whatever the abilities are, and also split between 2 units. So basically, for both cards, minus 1.5 stats, and so on and so forth. Regarding that calculation, with the old standard, would be Menace would be above the curve by 2.5 stats ish. Now comes the kicker. We actually are contemplating, because we're slowly getting there, to give units with cost 5 or more, like 2 more stat points.
Yeah.
Because that makes sense. That our bigger units usually fall hard due to how they're kitted, and because they're a lack of immediate impact compared to the removal suits or interactions of actions that we have in the game, and their speed compared to units, they usually fall off hard. 2 extra stat points allows them more flexibility, and actually, yeah, sure, they boost their power level, but they actually now matter way more, especially since we increased the amount of ramp tools we had and made them a bit better. Menace post new calculation would be approximately on the power level that we see him now, maybe plus minus 0.5 stat points, which is funny.
See, here's my thing. Endure, though, in particular, is worth more than a point of HP. A point of it.
It is.
Yeah, a point of Endure is like 1.5 points of HP, if not more.
That's actually what I did with the calculation. Each point, basically each point of Endure, starting 2 Endure points, would be equal to a ward. That's 1 point. So technically 2 Endure is like 1 stat point, and the moment you start 3 Endure, it's 2 stat points, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
You could probably say, okay, we can make it 2.5. We can make it 1.5 stat point. So yeah, sure. It depends on the suit, and his Endure, while being impactful, is still like his overrun, conditional.
Yeah.
If you deal with a Great Beetle, he doesn't have Endure. If you nuke him with a Heart Removal, or even funny enough with Scroll Bazooka, it doesn't matter.
What do you think of this, Empty?
I sort of agree with the comparisons to Dan, since I think a lot of the time the gameplay is going to be very similar here, where you have like this big duelist threat, as long as you can't remove the beetle.
Yeah.
The other problem that I sort of have with this card is that I don't like the endure keyword thing, mostly because of the art. I really wish they came up with a unique art like harmonize or merge instead of just zooming in.
Especially for the keywords, it makes sense to give it like a what you would expect the actual dangle to look like if it gets in. That's what I was thinking with harmonize.
Yeah.
And this is just, I have Ickling who's smugly menacing me for some reason, and I feel very uncomfortable.
I do like how it has this sort of like duelist and attack design going on with where it like menace attacks when the beetle does.
Yeah. Honestly, I think I'm just going to hang back with my beetle. Thank you very much. He's a really good shield. I can get away with a lot of kills the other way. But yeah, if I want to charge through, I just have menace. I just have the beetle attack, and then I can also get a duelist proc off before it goes into attacks. And
I mean, if your opponent only has like 1 and 2 health units, Endure 1 is going to do a really good job of protecting the beetle. That's one of the things I like about Endure so much, is that it's an effective negator for multi-blocking.
Yeah. You know what's better effective negator for multi-blocking? Frenzy.
They both share technically the same space.
I want one that has both, though.
No multi-blocking.
Yeah. Everything you block this with is going to hurt. Kind of lost position in the... But yeah. Oh, wait. Wrong link.
By the way, how does Endure actually interact with Deadly?
With what?
With Deadly.
Has to actually...
if the unit dies, there's no damage prevention in collective.
There's pretend damage prevention.
Yep, which is what Endure uses.
Yeah. So the Neon Suit of Hearts is a 5-drop mine, 2/4 human trickster from Aesthetica with ambush, and when an ally unit survives damage, banish and return it. And entrance gain 2 XP. I looked at nothing about this card beforehand. The quote is from the dove. The quote is from the bird, dude. The flavor text. Anyways, so this is another 5-drop 2/4 from Aesthetica. So we have a grounds to evaluate this with. This says if you get damaged a little bit, flicker yourself. So this gives us potential for a lot of flicker. And also turns like Lightning Surge into Grave Rave for you, basically. This is powerful potentially, but could also give you not much benefit at all, depending on what happens. And it makes sure that if you want to kill a neon unit, hit a neon unit, you have to kill the neon unit. Who wants to go first on this one? Empty, you want to go?
Sure. Yeah, so the reason I picked this card is I think it's a really interesting design space for neons. I really like how it makes it so you can run this deck where you're running like a bunch of early game cards like Vicious Stare and Plasma Splish, and then later in the game you can drop your Suit of Hearts and just chain all those off in order to get a whole bunch of bounce triggers on your neons. I think it may be like a bit overcosted for what it's doing. I think like this version is fine, but if it was lower cost and had like a different entrance and stat line, I think it would be a lot better, because you really want to get this out a bit earlier. And at 5, like there's a lot of options your opponent's going to have to just remove this instantly and disrupt your value. But I think once this goes off, it's going to be really strong.
Yeah, so we're losing Surge post rotation, but we got to get a Surge back eventually, and then this just makes any effect that's like that really, really, really powerful is the concern that I have. But like you said, it is 5. It's a little too late to really guarantee it. But there's also the matter of that entrance and gaining XP. And I don't know. Am I wrong to be worried about this, Grief?
I usually said that because many people actually said this is very strong, this is nearly overpowered because you can now multi-ping it with the cards in your hand. On the other hand, this is a 5-cost unit against 2 XP. Next turn, if you really want to dump every fucking resource in your hand into basically making them, oh yeah, my ping action now has +2 XP because I hit that dude. Now he cuts back. And I also can block with him, so I get extra 2 XP out of that turn. So 4 XP and so on and so forth. Sure, you can do that. A simple fucking fix to that is twofold. Either say other ally unit, so he cannot recur himself to do that effect. Or there was another thing, like giving him something like untargetable / what was it? No, there was another pretty easy fix to how he could not interact in that way with any kind of burn setup that you have in your hand to hyper ramp you. Which, as I said, post 5 mana is only really important for 1, maybe 2 heroes, and most of our really good, efficient ways to do so would be ramping XP outside of mind.
Yeah,
I think it's fine.
Yeah, I do too. The only thing that really breaks this, to be clear, is splash damage. Because we have like Fyra's Matchstick, which turns junk into gold. This turns whatever random pings you have into Vanishing Act, which in and of itself is not super powerful. But if you can get multiple target type stuff, it can get a little out of hand. So in most cases, I think this is fine. I think if you said people were really that worried about it being overpowered, I think that's a little bit of an overreaction. But there are indeed some things that need to be watched over that can be potentially scary combos. As a guy who loves Aesthetica and loves this deck, though, I'm eager to play him, so I'm really not complaining. I just wanted to say that maybe this is something we need to think about.
I think if people are really scared of that XP growth, you could reduce the XP to 1 and then reduce the cost to compensate.
Yeah. Okay. The Deck of Insanity is a 1-drop neutral action from Hallucinogenica, Realm of Abstraction. Draw a card and start a game. This game, when you gain HP, lose it, and your units have entrance, you take 2 damage and draw a card. It's from Sporium Corium and is from Apra's New Realm, where the theme is there is no theme except abstract shapes. I'm really not a fan of the realm idea. I've already talked with Apra about it, but I'm going to evaluate the cards on their own merits. So this is a rare. Let me see where it's sitting at. It's sitting at 3, so it's not doing too well, but it is a super interesting effect. And it's also potentially pretty scary. There's not really a lot of ways to game the... It's making sure that when you take damage, you actually take the damage, and the damage stays. And it puts you on this weird clock, and I'm not really sure if there's like a build that can make this work. So, Empty, did you pick this?
Yes.
Am I wrong that it's really, really hard to get this to actually work for you?
Oh yeah, I think from like a purely mathematical perspective, this card is completely busted and insane.
Yeah.
I can't come up with the exact deck that would run it.
Yeah.
But having a free ability that lets you take 2 damage to draw a card whenever you play a unit, that sounds absolutely busted. I feel like there has to be a deck that could make this work and like completely break it. Because that effect is just so insane. It's life tap from Hearthstone for free every time you play a unit.
Or the other reference is like It's almost kind of like fast spawn for Magic in a way. Grief, you're giving us your classic Grinch crazy brewer smile. So I think it's time for a Grief's crazy brewer corner. Go.
This card is currently utter garbage. Why? Because to really capitalize on this card, you need to have to play one of 2 to 3 different decks. Complete balls to the walls, no shits given aggro, where the only idea that you have in mind is face is the place, and we don't have that in collective, and probably never will, due to the fact how units and actions are basically in a functional play system, and people don't want to give agile or any hyper aggression to any low cost units, empty included. The second thing is probably in some form of self-damage deck where you can combo off the type of effect where you can, now I deal damage to myself and I trigger the effects and maybe play even the Blood Priest. So now I can also burn my opponent and whatsoever, and basically try to interact in that way and just chain it for multiple combo triggers. The last part would be, oh yeah, now I play my Pride, and now every card that I draw will probably help me win the game. But the biggest threat of Pride currently is the game itself and the word bug. And Pride is, by the way, not in rotation. So yeah, that deck is also out of question. So in the environment of Standard, there's actually no real deck that can capitalize on it.
Yeah.
Sure, it will turn any kind of unit into a benefit because it will always go neutral when it comes to card advantage, and even +1 in some cases, depending on how your opponent interacts with you. But there's also another caveat. This takes Enter's play into effect. So we talked about Grave Rave.
Yeah,
Also,
Grave Rave becomes like just a bomb to just shoot the player who's playing this, they're just dead.
Exactly. You cannot play tokens with it because the hard cap for this card is 13 units.
Yeah.
Okay. Deck idea. You run this with action spam.
We've seen it. I've played against it. I've wrecked that deck with the current standard version of a very, very bad hand disruption deck. Do you know what kind of card wrecks this card's shit the most? Binding Magician.
Yeah.
Thought Suppressor.
Binding Magician isn't in standard post rotation.
Yeah, but still, I mean.
Yeah, I actually agree. I think the problem Grief outlined is pretty neat, and Empty kind of filled in the rest of the details, right? There are people who understand mathematics and card advantage who are like, if this ever finds a home, it'll be horrible. And I understand that perspective. And for the people who don't see that perspective, they're like, I have a home for this, and this card is going to kill me if I run it. Right? You can't win. It's like both sides have completely unrelated issues that are, say, this card is majorly problematic. Now, I would like to put some qualifiers on that. It might be possible to fix it. I just don't know what the fix is. I think 1 damage might be honestly too far away in the direction. That's the thing, is I don't even know.
No. Technically, you will just leave the card as it is because, as I said, most of the decks that could actually have the most benefit from it cannot exist due to cards rotating out and those quote-unquote mistakes never being made again. Because in the case of Pride, that's what is probably a card design that will not be touched upon. The second is just an engine thing because extra hard fit of balls to balls aggro will probably never be the case, since it's technically an engine thing in play pass. But, and the big but in here with this card, this is actually a very good design when it comes to deck builders and pilots, because this is the same kind of effect or filter that will filter out people who A, can capitalize and play this card well, and B, those who will die to that effect, similar to billing themselves to Empress Rush.
Yeah. I don't know. It seems to me like it's a very, very hard formula to get right. I don't know what the answer is, but it is an interesting card. And that's one thing I always want to talk about here on the show. Interesting cards that I don't know if they should ever get in the game in this case.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of the thing with this card. Like, I would love to test decks with it.
Yeah.
I don't really want it in the game, though, because, like, the moment that this is playable, the only reason it's going to be playable is because something absolutely breaks it.
Yeah. So hats off to Sporium Corium. This was a very interesting intellectual exercise. But there's some thoughts as to why it's a 3. And we do like your design. Tallow Latcher is a 3-drop strength 2/4 wax horror from Lux with regenerate. When you play a card that targets this duels the oldest, lowest HP enemy unit. So this is a potentially cool equipment buff thingy. And it gets in free attacks. It has like this weird pseudo duelist. But it starts with regenerate. So Grief, what do you think of this design?
A cool little auto dueler that actually doesn't come with a plethora of choose windows, so I'm fine with it. On the other hand, yeah, does this trigger before or after being targeted?
Before.
Before. So it won't get the benefits of buffs before it actually fires, which is a pretty fair advantage. Yeah, actually it's a really fine and solid design. Nothing to complain about it.
This feels in an interesting. So one of the decks that I run, because it's just my favorite card of all time, you guys all already know this, Mass of Many Men. This is a good card for a mass soup deck, because this and Sam make really good friends with each other. Then you could just do a bunch of cheap equipment and just wipe your opponent's board for free.
I thought you were going to bring up the soul capture camera.
What are you doing? This is actually really interesting with soul capture.
Yeah, it's the perfect opportunity.
Really? Yeah. It's always
Why?
going to be off affinity.
Why, Empty? Why are you doing this to me? Why do you hate me so much? Oh God.
So yeah, you can work your way up through the ranks and snap some pictures. Empty, what do you think of this?
I think this is an awesome card. I'm like one of the reasons I really want to talk about it is because it fixes the choose window spam thing.
Yeah.
That like so one of the decks that I've been playing a bunch is Spectres. I love the deck. I hate how many choose windows it has. It's a constant issue. You just go through so many every turn.
One thing, and I think maybe one day we need to sit down and like have this discussion. 2 discussions we need to have. One of which is the effect on Living Roots and Loudmouth needs to get keyworded, just so they don't hardlock duelists. That's an unrelated issue. The other one is we might need. I think there's another card game that actually has this, where there's a word that just means this is the weakest thing we think they have, and it resolves all ties. So it's starts with the lowest HP and then moves to the lowest attack and then so on and so forth, so that it's deliberately trying to target small things.
Legends of Runeterra, I guess you're thinking about.
Yes.
It has weakest and strongest keyword.
Yeah, I think we might one day need one of those things, because we're seeing designs like Bonsai Bomber and whatnot that really need something like that. I don't know. Because it does help with the choose window problem. And I do think this is an elegant enough solution.
Yeah, well, the only problem with this solution, which is fixed by keywording things, is it does have to be an uncommon because of the text crunch.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's a discussion we need to have one day, is talking about how to fix excessive choose windows, because that's a big problem in digital CCGs. And I think this is a fairly elegant solution at an uncommon. And potentially fun combos with equipment decks or whatever people want to do with this. Okay, so the Devastating Demon is a 6-drop mine 7/7 demon from Talira. With Overrun and Summon, create Ties That Bind and put it onto your opponent's deck 5th from the top. Ties That Bind deals 3 damage to all units, and when this leaves your deck, play and draw a card. So this is a delayed bomb that's about to go off. It should be a trap, because it is basically a trap. And kind of a splashy one at that. So what do we think about this one? I'll let Grief start.
I like Chekhov's gun that can function with self-mill and scour. To be honest, this is one of the designs where it really, even in a card lab set, this is cool. I want that in the game. It is a huge beat stick with Overrun with a very unique drawback that you can actually, depending on what you're going for, turn into a board wipe or a trigger for rage, or just basically ignore it and wait until you run through your deck to maybe hit it then at the moment where you're getting to the, what was it, 5th card of it? Yeah, 5th card of the deck. On the other hand, as I said, this can be also triggered way faster due to Scour or Duelist or Milling. And
well, you
both
can't.
options.
Well, if your opponent's running Scour, then you're in a rough spot.
No. The trigger goes off the moment the card leaves the deck.
Oh.
Yeah. If you scour it away, it happens.
That's why I said this is a very unique card to interact with, and I love it for it. Yeah. Because it creates unique situations.
And because we have this long-standing grudge against Tutor, we don't have a lot of shuffle effects in the game, which means that you're stuck with it exactly where it's at most of the time.
Yep.
Other cool interaction. Deep Disciple.
Yeah. I never thought I would be longing to have the Dragon Housekeeper just to shuffle my portrait down.
Oh god.
Oh, how we missed thee. No. So yeah, this is really cool. It just creates a board state that's just interesting. Like, I don't know if it's good all the time or bad all the time. It's very dependent on what's going on at the moment, but it's always interesting, and I like that. And the art's really beautiful on this one. I like the little shoulder monster. I want me one of those. Or is that on his shoulder? Is that on a stick? Anyways, Empty, go.
Yeah, I love this card too. It just creates so many interesting situations where your opponent's like, do I develop? What can I play knowing that there's going to be a board clear coming in X amount of turns? And then, like, maybe they do develop and are like, I can end the game in 5 turns. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to make you draw 2 cards. Or I'm going to make you mill a few. Yeah. And then we're like, oh, shoot. My board is gone. The only like minor issue with this card is it does create like a bunch of memory issues sometimes. It would be sort of neat if like the card itself had like a little tooltip that told you where Ties That Bind were in the deck until it got shuffled. But it's a minor thing. The memory issues aren't that bad.
Yeah, and I do think it adds to the tension of you're like, crap, where is it? Is it 3 from the top? Oh wait, no, it's not.
I mean, yeah, I've had to break out the pen and paper for like pilgrimage and stuff.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times in my deck I've actually accidentally consulted a Way of Wisdom. I almost wish, and I know this is, I'm a big fan of tribal designs. I almost wish it dealt damage to non-demons. But that's probably a bit too much.
Yeah. I mean, if we could get like a reveal cards in deck feature, sort of like Magic Arena has, then like all the problems with these sort of designs would go away. But probably take a lot of development time.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to stop the share. There were actually I think there was a couple minor announcements we forgot in the beginning of the show. First of all, there is a design competition, that's going to be going on in a couple weeks. I don't know if it's officially set for next week, French vanillas, very underappreciated thing in the game that we need more of, especially coming in post-rotation. I know I will actually be excited because we need some of these simpler designs in the game, even though we don't really have like a limited mode or anything. They can be challenging and very interesting to design. Also, if you guys are on the Discord, make sure to check out the Auray competition hosted by Phaetus. He's designing a new realm and has offloaded the design, most of the bulk of the design work, to the players to try and create a realm that we'll all love. And of course, he's going to be giving away art for the cards that we design if you are in one of the top 8, I think. And also, if you're on the Discord and you're curious as to what I was referencing with the comic, go DM Dia, and I'm sure Dia will show it to you. It's a really cute little beginning of a story, and it should be pretty neat. So I think that's all. Like, comment, and subscribe. Remind me why I'm doing this, and keep playing the game and keep voting on cards. Bye.
See ya.